Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry. I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another video. No doubt you're here in response to the survival of an assassination attempt by former president and second-term hopeful Donald Trump. For so many Americans, this is an event that has come closer to any other in their lifetime of a potential assassination of somebody this important in America. But I know that you know that this is not the first time this has happened. Although there have been many attempts at political assassinations, there of course have been many that have actually been successful. So as people are processing that right now, I thought it'd be a good time to talk about assassination attempts and what the effects of those attempts have actually had. Now, I knew WatchMojo would be all over this, and I thought this would be a good video to put to the background of a discussion we can have here. And this video is titled 10 Assassination Attempts That Shook the World. Let's check this out. Now, since assassinations, almost by definition, are conspiratorial, you're probably hearing a lot of different things going on right now about motives and connections and all those types of things. And since the event is still very new and is still breaking, it's of course important to be very critical about what you hear and don't rush to form opinions. A lot of people like to do that. They feel like it's important to rush some kind of opinion about everything. And that's not necessarily the way that you arrive to truth and the way that you can process things. So this is still, again, very ongoing, but it's not soon enough that we can't talk about historically assassinations or attempted assassinations, what have the effects of those have been, both globally and of course here in the United States. So let's check this out and let's see what we can talk about.
There has been some kind of disturbance that clearly sets law enforcement and Secret Service into motion.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at 10 infamous assassination attempts. For this list, we're examining the most notorious attempts on the lives of public figures throughout history. What other infamous failed hit jobs did we miss? Let us know in the comments
Probably been hearing
below.
a lot about the Reagan attempt.
Donald Trump. While speaking at a Pennsylvania campaign rally on July 13, 2024, Republican nominee Donald Trump survived an apparent assassination attempt. During the beginning of his speech, gunfire erupted, and Trump fell to the ground as Secret Service agents surrounded him.
We are looking at President Trump. This does not look good. I'm going to be honest with you, from what we can see right here, it looks like they are attempting to move him out, that he may have been injured.
Trump, bloodied from a bullet that pierced his ear, raised his fist defiantly before being rushed off stage.
By the way, those photos are going to become iconic, aren't they? Regardless of the effects that happen here. Now, we are less than 4 months away from the presidential election, so the effects of this are still yet to be known. What effects could this have on the election? So it's hard to say if they're going to, say something like that. But yes, of course, it was shocking. This is not something that happens in the United States that often, although it has happened, and especially for a current generation of Americans.
One spectator died during the incident, while the gunman was engaged and killed by the U.S. Secret Service counter-assault team. The attack, the first on a presidential candidate since Ronald Reagan in 1981, came amid a polarized political atmosphere in America.
Now, not to be the actually guy, there have been things that have like attempts, I guess, at assassinations that have happened outside like the United States, like George W. Bush had a couple there, there were plots to like bombs and stuff like that there were like attempts. So, but like on US soil like this, yeah, you really go back to Reagan for the most part. But yeah, Bush was one, but that was abroad.
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
At Bayfront Park, while FDR spoke from an open car, 5 revolver shots rang out.
In November 1932,
this one doesn't get talked
Franklin
about.
D. Roosevelt won a landslide election to become the 32nd president of the United States.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
A few weeks before his inauguration, Roosevelt was delivering a speech at the Bayfront Park in Miami, Florida, when he was shot at by Giuseppe Zangara. Zangara, an unemployed bricklayer, fired 6 shots at the then president-elect, but failed to hit his target. It's believed that a woman named Lillian Cross grabbed Zangara's arm after he fired the first shot, preventing him from killing Roosevelt. Instead, he hit 5 other people, including Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak, who later died of his injuries. After the death of Cermak, Zangara was found guilty of first-degree murder and executed by electric chair.
You don't like him for president.
That's all.
As a man, he's all right.
Men are right, my president is not right.
Vladimir.
There's so many things about FDR's presidency and his life that have made him, such a big character in American history that like attempt, you look at it something that not having that much of an effect. So he had already won the election. He's already going to be very popular. Now, he was elected right in the heart and the beginning of the heart of the Great Depression. And that's why he got elected. He had works programs. He had this stuff going. And so he's going to be spending the rest of this decade doing things that a lot of Americans are going to like. He was quite popular. I remember he's going to be elected 3 more times after this until his death from polio in 1945. So that is one where you're looking at like assassination attempts. Probably can't look at it as like emboldening a supporter base or something like that, because so many of those things like had already existed, and it was, I don't know, it probably not as big of like an impact, but we'll see with some other ones. All right, Lenin. Now the thing about Lenin too is his family was known for assassination attempts, so they know all about this. In fact, his brother was convicted of that, was seen as a martyr.
Lenin. As the leader of the Bolshevik Party, Vladimir Lenin played a vital role in the 1917 October Revolution that saw him become the first head of Soviet Russia.
That man represented a whole epoch. Everything that has been created and is being created in our Soviet land is connected with his name, with his plans.
In 1918, Fanny Kaplan, a disgruntled socialist revolutionary who saw Lenin as a, quote, traitor to the revolution, made an attempt to assassinate him.
This is where people might also see and assume that assassins are people that are just going to be total 180-degree politically minded opponents of somebody. And that's not necessarily true. It can be infighting. That was a huge case with the rise of the Bolshevik Party, communism, socialism growing in this chaotic era of Russian history here, was how much infighting there was amongst people that outsiders might think are actually very unified. No. And so, yeah, that is more common than you think too. I mean, even we're still get to find details about like with Trump, but like they were saying he was, and people are jumping into conclusions about this, about how the guy had been registered as like a Republican before, but there's also reasons for that kind of thing. Like, for example, a lot of states require for you to be able to participate in like primaries to register for that political party. And sometimes people do that. Let's say you're a Democrat or a Republican and you want to have, you want to vote or get involved in the candidacy of another party. They'll go and, register as one of those people. So they'll go in, vote somebody that maybe they feel is like more of a moderate choice and do that. It happens all over the place. So, but anyways, infighting and stuff like that is very, very common in assassination attempts. And you saw it in there. And the Russian Revolution was huge. I mean, so many of them end up eating their own. Look at what Stalin does later. And so many of these people he went through the revolution with, had sent to the gulag and to firing squads. And yeah.
After the head of state gave a speech at a factory in Moscow, Kaplan fired 3 close-range shots at him.
As we now know from looking at some of these archives, his sister pleaded with him not to give this speech because there had been an assassination earlier in the day of a leading Bolshevik.
Although Lenin survived the attack, he was badly wounded by the bullets and is said to have never fully recovered from his injuries. Kaplan was swiftly arrested and took full responsibility for the incident. She was executed a few days later.
So yeah, there's going to be, with him, he's going to have a lot of health problems. People that didn't like him didn't have to put up with him very long because he ends up suffering from some massive strokes that totally debilitated his health. But anyway, just a good example there of infighting within political groups. And politics is so emotionally charged that it can tweak people that are, already on that fringe of violence, seeing violence as, acceptable thing. All right. Yes. The Pope. Yes, religious leaders. A lot of people see religious leaders the same way they might see political leaders there. I know at this one, it definitely changed a lot of policy. I know at this afterwards, just so I don't forget if they talk about it, the idea of having like popes in open air cars like this, kind of like with Kennedy, they're going to stop doing that. So you got like the Pope Mobile, that like car where the Pope's inside, but it's like a bulletproof bubble. And all that changed after this, after Pope John Paul.
John Paul II. Pope John Paul II was the leader of the Catholic Church from 1978 until his death in 2005. 3 years into his reign, John Paul II's life nearly came to an abrupt end in St. Peter's Square in Vatican City.
And the Pope extended his hand to the cameraman, Askew stopped filming to receive the blessing, and a moment later, the shots rang out.
On May 13, 1981, while entering the square to address an audience, the Pope was shot at by Turkish gunman Mehmet Ali Aja. Aja fired 4 times, with 2 of the bullets hitting John Paul II in his torso and left index finger. Luckily, the bullets missed the Pope's vital organs, and he survived after an emergency surgery.
1 bullet narrowly missed the Pope's heart. The motive was a mystery.
Aja was apprehended and sentenced to life imprisonment, but he was pardoned in 2000 at the Pope's request.
Outside, Aja described the former Pope's survival as a miracle.
Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah, so that changed a lot of policy about, especially within the church, of going out in open air public. Like I was saying before with JFK, you're going to see that too. And also ramping up of security. That's going to be an issue. Now, a lot of times, if you're somebody that's looked into like assassinations of people before, it's probably very common that when you learn about the person, you might find a lot of their beliefs are inconsistent. And that happens a lot. That's where it's like this weird, interesting brand of psychology out there about assassins that, sometimes they're even like fans of them. But yeah, a lot of time you've been looking at them and be like, I don't get why this guy was against this person or something like that. And sometimes it can be very confusing, and you'd probably drive yourself crazy trying to make sense of what oftentimes can be very insane thing that people can can do it. Because there's very clear politically motivated stuff. Then some stuff is just chalk it up to insanity too. Not saying this last one specifically, but just if you've looked at a lot of assassinations, I think you know what you're talking about. All right, Charles de Gaulle. All right, coming in France.
Throughout his life, French President Charles de Gaulle is believed to have survived around 30 assassination attempts. Arguably, the most infamous of all was the 1962 plot led by French Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Bastien Thierry. Bastien Thierry was apparently motivated by his disapproval of de Gaulle's decision to grant Algeria its independence. On August 22, 1962, the Air Force officer led a group of 3 shooters to rain down bullets on de Gaulle's motorcade.
I've never seen that
movie. Miraculous.
Is that was it called The Day of the Jackal? Is that about like Algerian independence? So the Algerian Civil War was insanely brutal. One of the last places that the French were trying to hold on to from their empire was Algeria. Now, Algeria is, again, going to be a different situation than, say, something like Vietnam, which they tried to fight to, keep back in the 1950s after World War II, but didn't work. But Algeria, first off, is right across the Mediterranean from France. It also had like basically millions of French citizens in it. So it was seen as more French than a lot of their other colonies. Now there's this huge, movement this is the era of decolonization in Africa, where pretty much all the colonial powers are losing grip on all of their colonies. And a lot of them let them go kind of peacefully. The British did a lot of that in Africa for the most part. None of them did a very good job of transferring power, and because these colonies had all been built upon exploitation and lack of infrastructure development and stuff like that, which left a lot of chaos. But Algeria was one of the last places the French were really were unwilling to just let go. And it took a brutal war, and thousands died, and brutal.
The president, his wife, and his entourage escaped unhurt.
Several bullets pierced the president's car. One came within an inch of his head.
Is that actually about?
But, as if by a miracle, neither he nor anyone else was hurt.
De Gaulle is said to have mocked them by saying that they shot like pigs. For spearheading the assassination plot, Bastien Thierry was put to death by firing squad.
No French soldier is going to raise his rifle against me.
Malala Yousafzai.
Oh, Malala, she's coming up next. There are, again, different reasons for assassination. One of them, because we've seen political, and then we also have people that would be seen as like independence leaders, or they're anti-colonialists, or a lot of people just call them freedom fighters. And so, yeah, trying to attempt or conducting assassinations with the goal of emancipation. Very common as well. All right, Malala, again, she was somebody that the outside world, loved this girl, but is going to have her enemies for, trying to make significant or promoting significant cultural changes. We'll see what her
She
story
was
is gonna be here.
shot because she spoke up for the 31 million girls around the world who cannot get an education.
Yeah, illiteracy.
Born to an education activist, Malala Yousafzai became an advocate for girls' rights to education from a young age. She remained outspoken against the Pakistani Taliban's decree against girls attending school. In retaliation, Yousafzai was targeted by a Taliban gunman who shot her while she was on a bus going home from school on October 9, 2012. She was left in a critical state, but was able to fully recover after
Civil rights
receiving
leaders.
life-saving surgery in Pakistan.
Another
and the UK.
major target.
It is amazing, truly amazing.
assassinations.
I don't know why she survived.
The attack received global attention and condemnation from world leaders. Despite the temporary setback, Yousafzai continued her activism, garnering even more prominence than before.
So that's what I'm talking about. When I went into this video, one thing I wanted to try to make sure we focused on was historically, what are the effects of these things? So a lot of these can galvanize support. You can see that. And the people that already support those people are going to be more emboldened. People that may be on the fence for support will often have sympathy. That's another big one as well. And like, she's an example of that. You know, her being the target of this attack for so many people emboldened the idea that she was doing something right. And I don't want to call that, there's like some people can see those type of events as we call like a persecution complex. The more you're persecuted, then that naturally then leads that if you're being persecuted for something that your beliefs are right. That's different though than some of these other cases here, because if you already believe that those persecuting those people are already like the bad guys, it just makes them look, you know, even worse that way. So this would then garner attention by some people that don't know about it. So like someone like with her, that's what that would do, is people that were unaware of her and she has this attack is going to be like, oh, this really is a big deal. I've been paying attention to it. It sheds light on issues that people otherwise may not have cared about or maybe even known about. You can see that with Malala.
2014, she received the Nobel Peace Prize, becoming the world's youngest Nobel laureate.
What is she doing right now? I have not heard from her in a while.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Okay, I'm glad they're going to get Teddy. But yeah, anybody know what she is up to right now? I haven't heard from her and heard about her in quite a while. All right, so on my social media, by the way, follow me on Twitter. You know, I don't do like tons of hot takes and stuff. A lot of it's whatever, goofing around, and on the YouTube community page, I immediately was talking about all these discussions were going around immediately about what's this going to do for like Trump's presidency. And my thing was, I think it's going to help promote his cause. And a couple examples of people that gained support because of attempts I had mentioned was Theodore Roosevelt's one, and then I'm sure they're going to be talking about Reagan here. But yeah, Roosevelt's big famous thing that has put him in this high Chad tier was that the dude was shot, and then rather than get the medical attention right away, he had the bullet in him and went to go and gave a speech. And, you know, going up there to the podium and be like, so I just got shot, but this wasn't going to take me away from talking to you people. Like, that stuff is like political ammunition. And it gave him this incredible status for, you know, his popularity. And his popularity was so interesting because it waned. It was a roller coaster for his whole life. Early on being like hated, and then he's loved, and then like bleh, and then coming back and forth. So, but Roosevelt, I would say probably the most famous of assassination attempts, not that actually killed him, but like assassination attempts, you know, I feel like Roosevelt's gets talked about the most.
The 26th president of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt remained in office from 1901 to 1909.
He loved public speaking.
Roosevelt made a third bid for the presidency, this time under his newly founded Progressive Party. On October 14th, while at a campaign event in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Roosevelt survived an assassination attempt by a former saloon keeper named John Fleming Schrank.
And I want to say the effect of him wasn't necessarily riding into political power, because he's actually going to end up losing, later. But it's one of those things that I feel like the assassination attempt, it helped him in retrospect. Like, people looking back at him now, even though this may have happened a little bit later from like when he was first president, it like added to it retrospectively about his character, that he must have been super tough, that, you know, even after this, he was still, you know, fighting on.
Came all the way
bull
from
moose,
Brooklyn,
right?
on a mission.
He was obsessed with the Constitution, and he felt that Roosevelt shouldn't run for a third term and that he must be stopped.
Schrank shot the ex-president in the chest, but it failed to hit any vital organs as it was slowed down by an eyeglass case and a 50-page folded document in his pocket. Roosevelt went on to deliver a roaring 90-minute speech before he was eventually taken to the hospital.
He was introduced, and when he walked down, huge standing ovation.
The bullet remained lodged in his chest until his death in 1919.
Just live off of it.
Fidel.
All right. So one thing I thought, if you didn't know about this, that's really interesting about him is that the assassin or attempted assassin for that, he said that he was inspired and visited by President McKinley's ghost. So if you know about Roosevelt, he became the president because of an assassination. But yeah, he was visited by McKinley's ghost. This is where, again, you start getting into people that are, you know, whack jobs, but maybe he did get visited. I don't know. All right, Castro. The interesting thing about this one is these assassination attempts were also led and, you know, organized by the United States.
Fidel Castro. It's been said that Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro was the target of no less than 634 assassination attempts throughout.
Oh, look at Brezhnev back there. I can't look at that guy without noticing. He is. And there's a joke in our classes where something will come up about like attractive world leaders and stuff. That always comes back to most unattractive. And a meme in my classes has been that Brezhnev is on that list of least attractive.
His life.
Okay.
Since the 1960s, the CIA had been after Castro like a coyote trying to catch a roadrunner. In fact, most of their plans sounded like they came straight out of the Acme Handbook.
While that may or may not be an exaggerated figure, some of those plots, orchestrated by the CIA no less, range from elaborate to downright comical. The attempts include, but are not limited to, exploding cigars, poisoned pens, booby-trapped seashells, a contaminated scuba diving suit, and just about every other James Bond level contraption stuff, you can think of. At one point, the CIA even enlisted the help of the mafia to get rid of Castro. All of these attempts were unsuccessful, and Castro remained a prominent figure in Cuban politics, even after his retirement in 2008.
Despite all the effort the CIA put into killing Castro, the man still outlasted 10 U.S. presidents before stepping down due to health issues.
Ronald Reagan.
Okay. All right, yeah, this was the other one I had mentioned in my social media tweet. Ronald Reagan, somebody that is actually eventually here going to ride to the basically biggest landslide in American history here. And that one also had a really weird background of her assassin story. So we'll see what they say about it, though.
Very sketchy at this moment. We don't know precisely.
And by the way, this is also the most recent one that we see, a significant one here happening on U.S. soil. So it's been a long time.
What happened? We don't know the sequence. First of all, the president is safe.
A few months after his landslide victory against incumbent President Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan very nearly lost his life. The newly elected president was shot by John Hinckley Jr. while leaving the Washington Hilton Hotel on March 30th, 1981. Motivated by a desire to gain the attention of actress Jodie Foster, Hinckley fired six.
Jodie Foster was like, I forget the exact date. She was like an early teenager. Wasn't she like 13, 14 or something like that? She was, you know, up and coming young movie star. And this weirdo dude wanted to impress a teenage movie star. Good.
6 shots, only managing to hit him once. Nonetheless, Jodie Foster, Hinckley fired 6 shots, only managing to hit him once. Nonetheless, Reagan was seriously wounded, suffering a broken rib, collapsed lung, and internal bleeding.
And by the way, I'm sure you all just asked yourself between when I stopped and said that, if you didn't know this and now, how would that impress Jodie Foster? I don't know. Like, she was going to be like, nice. Like, she was this like against neoconservatism, you know, as this teenage girl or something like that. Like, no.
Just then I coughed and I had a handful of bright red frothy blood.
He was rushed to the hospital and eventually recovered after receiving emergency surgery. One of the other victims of the attack was then Press Secretary James Brady, who suffered significant brain damage that left him with permanent disabilities. Adolf Hitler.
The Allies were closing.
All right, so yeah, saw that with Reagan being one of the more recent ones, and yeah, it's going to increase in popularity. He's going to be very popular for that next time around as well. All right, Hitler. Yep. He had a bunch. Mustache Man had a bunch of attempts. and
his own forces were plotting his demise.
This is where people start talking about assassination attempts, and they're like, "Okay, I wish this one actually went through." I always heard that question: if you could go back in time, would you have shot little mustache man when he was little? And people would be like, yeah. And you wonder if that kind of thought process like goes into the minds of like current assassins, where they're like, no, I was just doing what I think this guy was going to be the next Hitler or something like that. I don't know if stuff like that will come out with this dude who tried to take Trump out. You know, he's like, I was trying to prevent another Hitler or something like that. Like, we don't know that kind of stuff, but it is a weird thing to think about.
Despicable acts he orchestrated. It's no surprise that there were multiple plots to assassinate Adolf Hitler.
From his own party,
infamous
too,
being
by
the
the way.
20 July plot. About a year before World War II would come to an end, a group of German resistance officers led by Klaus von Stauffenberg plotted to assassinate Hitler using explosives. On July 20th, 1944, von Stauffenberg placed a briefcase with the explosives in a conference room where Hitler was meeting with some military officers. However, before it could detonate, the briefcase was moved further away from the dictator, sparing him of any serious injuries. Hitler's grip on power.
I mean, you know, for every successful attempt or really close to being successful attempt, there's a magnitude higher percentage of attempts that didn't work, that got stopped at some point, whether it was not just like cold feet either, but just something wrong place, wrong time, something happens. And that's incalculable to think about how many there are. But it does show, though, about how attempts like this, like assassination attempts, I mean, they can be history altering. They can be. What would have happened here? I mean, do you think it would have been like, okay, if that one had worked, all of a sudden what? It would just be like a 1-for-1, same playing out of history. It's hard to say, but yeah, it's never going to be the same.
Afterwards, and he ordered the execution of almost 5,000 people, including many involved in the failed plot.
All right, so we saw some examples there. Hopefully I was able to tell you a little bit about the effects of these things. But what do you guys think? I don't know, is there generally, you think, the outcome of an attempted assassination, not one that's actually been carried out successfully? Do you think there's more often than not a similar effect that happens with that, with it being seen as a positive for that person in the end, even though they attempted it? I mean, it's like an awful thing to go through, but like it helps their careers. And I guess coming back, because a lot of you guys, again, are coming to this with very hot on the mind here with like a Trump assassination. We are less than 4 months away from the presidential election. So we'll see what the true effects are come, say, November with the election there. There's still a lot of things that can happen. You know, this already at this time, we just came out of, and I covered video where there was big calls for, you know, President Biden to not seek re-election. A lot of people are questioning his age and mental faculties as a part of that. So you could also, I think, combine that, because that's still very much a topic of discussion, with what seems to be a rallying behind former President Trump and could affect the election even more. But there's still, again, it shows you, though, how things can also change fairly quickly. I think that's something we got to know, and there's still a lot to look at. So if you watch this video after the election, we'll know a lot more by then. If you are watching this maybe after the election, comment down and give a little history lesson there. What was the effect of this assassination attempt? All right, with that, thanks for hanging out with me today. We'll see you in the next one.